Welcome back to the show, guys. I am your interim substitute host today. Tala, you're familiar with me, maybe. I don't know. I am here today with Gen Z communication specialist Mariam Solika. She is the senior communication specialist from COP28, currently working with COP29. Beyond that, she's also the founder of The Good News, which is a news source that shares positive news from across the Arab world. They have over 110,000 followers from different social media platforms. Beyond that, further, she works under the leadership of Her Excellency Shamal Mazrou'i, the Minister of Community Development, spearheading communications and social media efforts for youth climate champions. So welcome, Mariam.
Hi, Tala. Thank you so much for having me today.
Our pleasure. We actually met on accident.
In Bonn.
Yeah, we had been emailing for a minute about getting you on the show. Yeah. And I was in Bonn supporting the COP29 team with their social media coverage of the SB60.
I remember.
And we just collided into one another.
Yeah, you feel it when there's a connection.
100%. Awesome. So we want to get started by talking a little bit about COP28, taking a look back, a retrospective, if you will. We'll then work our way into COP29. But I want to hear from you, having been so close to it and it having been such a monumental event in the UAE. So what, in your opinion, are the kind of key highlights and takeaways from COP28?
So COP28 for me was a transformative experience, if I would say, because I worked at COP27 when I was back in Egypt. I'm originally Egyptian. And transitioning from COP27 with the agenda that we had and the priorities that we had for the region, like MENA and Africa, and then transitioning into the UAE and the Gulf and what are the priorities of this region, it was very interesting for me. So it was my pleasure to be part of that team. I loved everything that we came out with, especially with the big UAE consensus. And within the UAE consensus, we had something called the Youth Climate Champion.
Correct.
This is a role that was founded by the UAE, and thankfully we were able to institutionalize it within the UNFCCC process. So being part of that and witnessing that and how youth can literally sit on negotiations table and discuss the matters or the subjects that they think are of matter to their home countries, it was for me something like beyond, especially that we used to work with small island developing states and the least developed countries. So seeing young people who are usually not that represented globally, having that seat on the table and empowered enough to take this on was like beyond a happy moment for me.
Absolutely. I think one of my key takeaways from the SB60 was witnessing just how vocal and erudite and powerful the youth voice was. In every press conference I attended and every talk I attended, it was the youth who had the sort of most, not necessarily most dissenting, not to put a negative spin on it, but they were just so fearless.
Exactly.
And it was much needed. Like it brought that vigor and energy to each conversation. It brought the sense of urgency.
Exactly, because definitely youth are always like, they're viewed as like the angry people, or we don't want to include youth because like they're always angry, they do not know how to negotiate. But when they actually are equipped and listened, are like treated in a way that's respectful and honored, you get to get the best out of them, because first of all, they are like driven with passion, they're driven with grit, and they are the ones who know what's going on, they are the ones who are going to live to see what's going to happen in the future. So it doesn't make any sense to have them excluded from these tables.
Absolutely. It's not just super relevant to their lives, but it's so fresh to them. Like when you enter a conversation newly, you have a take on it that's obviously going to be more passionate than when you've kind of been having the same conversation for a long time. So I think that sense of freshness is still there. Back to COP28, I kind of want to delve into, now that it's over, what do you think, beyond the UAE consensus, which we can talk about, what do you think is kind of the legacy of COP28?
The legacy of COP28, well, there were so many different topics, but for me, since I worked with the youth division, it was the institutionalization of that role. And again, because this role, what it mainly did was focus on the young people from underrepresented communities, indigenous communities, small island developing states, for how this role is able to support these young people to be in negotiations table, not only financially, but also like teaching them like how to properly negotiate and giving them the support they need. For me, that's a legacy, because the UAE, they did one big program. It's called the International Youth Climate Delegates Program.
Yep.
It had 100 delegates from all around the world. It's the first of its kind. And for me, even, there were some people from countries that I feel ashamed to know that I didn't know where their countries are on the map. So seeing them, locating them, hearing their voices, not only me, but everyone in the SBs and in the COP28 and COP29 as well, that for me is something that will live to and every COP. And now we've got a COP29 Youth Climate Champion, which is something that hasn't been existing in previous COPs. So seeing how this is growing, and now we're in discussions with Brazil for COP30. So you see how the UAE always has like the youth essence, and they do not just like sideline youth, or they do not do like the youth washing in essence.
Yeah.
It is incorporated within the country's vision and how they really empower young people. So especially with me working with Her Excellency Shamma, she's been the youngest minister ever.
She's so impressive.
She's not like, for me, this person, she's done so much in the youth agenda, not just on a local state, but regionally and globally. So just being part of her team and seeing how does she actually incorporate youth in everything, and just like takes a step back and puts youth in the forefront. For me, that was like something I've never seen before, and I've worked with a lot of people and a lot of government officials. So that for me is what the UAE legacy is all about, like putting youth in the heart of everything that they do.
Brilliant. Brilliant. You mentioned that you came off COP27 into COP28 and now into COP29. How did your involvement with COP first begin?
It was a very fun story, actually. So I used to work with a PR agency in Egypt. Like, I was working with a lot of clients, and one of the clients was the Egyptian Ministry of Environment. And then we got to work on COP27. For me, it was the first time to work on sustainability. And then I felt like this is very interesting, and there's so much more that could be done. So I did something that's pretty Gen Z. I texted Her Excellency Shamma, because I haven't met her before. I texted her on Instagram and on LinkedIn right before COP27 was over. And it's like, hey, it's Mariam from Egypt.
Remember me?
Hey, good news. Because I met her before. Like, we're going to get deeper into that when I was in a program. It's called the Young Arab Media Leaders Program. It was in the UAE. So I met her. She was like the vice president of the Arab Youth Center by then. So I texted her. I'm like, hey, Mariam, Egypt, COP27. If you've got any vacancy in the COP28 team, I'd love to be part of your team. And I just like went to sleep. It's fine. I texted a minister. Of course, she won't get
casual.
Back to me. Just like, of course, like something that you do just like out of, I don't know, boredom.
Yeah.
I dropped her a text.
Late night text to the minister.
And like, instead of texting my ex, I thought like, hey, might as well text the minister. I did that, and I wake up the next day and I find a text from Her Excellency's office. Hi, Mariam. When are you free this week for an interview? Amazing. What interview?
Amazing.
She actually read it. She's like, yeah, she read the text, and she sent it to her office, and they got in touch with me. And 2 weeks after that conversation happened, I was in the UAE. So again, when I'm telling you this country is a heart and center, and they're focused on youth, this is not something that they show off, or this is not a story for social media. This is something that she really does every single day. She does pray Fajr, and then she opens her DMs and sees what the young people need. And then she does actually act upon it, not in a week, not in a month, but the very next day, like just like 3-4 hours after I dropped the text. So just this incentive for me getting into the country, it changed everything on how I want to work, who am I working with, how to focus on the smallest and tiniest details before focusing on what gets on the news. Because when you work in PR, you usually focus on what the headlines want and what you want the press to see.
100%.
But working with someone like Her Excellency, you always want to focus on what do people want, how you can respond to each and every ask from young people, no matter how minor it is, because it's never minor.
Absolutely. So my takeaway from that is start DMing ministers immediately.
In the UAE.
In the UAE. Speaking of DMs, you have a lot of familiarity with social media. What role do you think, it might sound basic, but what role do you think that social media plays in sort of rallying the youth that maybe we didn't have as a tool previously?
Well, for me, I know it's very cliche and everyone's speaking about like how important social media is, but for me, it's front and center.
Yeah.
Just recently in Egypt, social media is taking like a really intensive role that it can change policies, not just in Egypt, everywhere across the globe.
Yeah.
And it can influence policymakers and governments to take measures that they wouldn't have taken before because of social media. And it's not just because of social media, it's Gen Z on social media.
Yeah.
It's a generation that's unstoppable, a generation that sees what's wrong and speaks about it so openly and like so fearlessly, and makes you feel happy and proud and shameless and fearless to be part of that community. And it's always, I feel like it's my pleasure to amplify these voices, whether it's with HE Shama or it's whether through my platform, The Good News, just to hear that one voice and have a platform that's big enough to amplify these voices after you've done your due diligence and you've done your research. This is what leading a meaningful life is for me in essence.
Absolutely. Do you think that social media is one of the main reasons that this generation is so keyed into these issues?
Definitely, and I'd have to coin it with empathy,
Mm-hmm.
because I think we're a generation of empaths, and we take a look at everything that's happening around us with a grain of salt. We do not take, like, not everything that descends from our elder generation, we do not take it into account straight away.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a matter of both. Like, we're a generation that's very heavily focused on like what's happening every day. We're very invested, and it's also a matter of like seeing the truth, because now you live in an age where I'm sitting with you right now. I can take a picture of anything, I can film anything, and I can post it online immediately.
Yeah.
So I feel like media has changed so much. Like, there's no, so back then it used to be sender, message, channel, receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Now the channel is just like sender, receiver.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So you
It's
cut away 2 steps. So it's quite interesting to see how everyone has become a journalist, because I studied journalism for 4 years, and it's very interesting to see how now everyone is a journalist, and like what kind of responsibility that goes with that. But it's also very interesting to see how each and every person reacts to this responsibility when they're given.
Absolutely. On the subject of youth, can you give us a couple of channels that, youth who are listening to this and want to get involved in more sustainability initiatives across the UAE? How can they get involved? Where can they start? Where can they apply?
I love that. So one of the most organizations that does incredible work locally and regionally is the Arab Youth Center. It was my pleasure to be part of their program. Like, before I came to the UAE, I applied as a young Arab media leader program delegate. It changed my life. It introduced me to Her Excellency Shamma, and it opened like millions of doors for me. So I would highly recommend any program that goes on with the Arab Youth Center. Now they have a program, it's called, I guess, Arab Youth for Climate Change, if I'm not mistaken. It's a council for young people who are interested in climate change, and it gives them like capacity building, networking opportunities, and even besides the sustainability part, they have like programs on diplomacy, on media.
Brilliant.
So it's an incredible segue if you want to be connected to like top tier professionals, young people in the Arab world, and they're very supportive of everything. So yeah, I'd highly recommend that.
Awesome. I want to hear more about that. I want to hear more about the Arab Youth Initiative that you got involved with that led you to having a minister's number in your phone book.
Well, it was the year 2019. One of my friends, her name is Jaida Al-Irsh. Hi, Jaida. She told me about there's a program for, they're funding 50 young people from the Arab world to come to the UAE to build their capacities with different media stakeholders like Reuters and what else? Al Arabiya, CNN. So it was a great program. So back in 2019, I didn't even have a passport. And I started applying. I was very passionate. So I got in, and then they texted me, hey, you need to be in the UAE in a couple of weeks. And in Egypt, like, this process is going to take more than a couple of weeks to have my passport. So I tried to figure it out to get my papers ready, but it didn't happen. I was very bummed, very disappointed. I didn't make it. And then 22 comes in, and I apply, 2020, sorry. I apply, very passionate. I wanted to get in, and just like any story that happened 2020.
Has the same ending.
Same ending.
Home.
Yeah. You end up at home. Nothing to do. So 2021 came, and same process. I apply, and with every year, it's a different version of me, a different media person. Like, I was a media student back then I was a media professional. Then everything had changed. So finally, I got in, fled to the UAE. It was my first time to travel.
Wow.
Overall, and how lucky I am that the UAE was my first destination. I love to call it the city of dreams. It is like, back then they used to have the American dream. I think now it's the UAE dream. It's the land of opportunities where everything's possible. So that happened. It was 2 weeks. I got introduced to 50 of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. Arab youth from all across the globe, Palestine, Jordan, Morocco, Algeria. Shout out to all of you guys.
Incredible.
And within the program, we've got to learn like so many different things in terms of like media, capacity building, digital, and like how to film, etc. But for me, the most important part was the network that I built. And I think almost half of the people in the program now, they work in the UAE. And even if they're not working in the UAE, they have like prestigious jobs in their own home countries. So that for me was a cornerstone. And when I came back to Egypt, I came back with a different mentality. Like there's so much I could be doing on a regional level and on a global level. I don't want to close my potential
100%.
just on the local level. So this is where the inspiration came from, that I want to take it a bit higher. So after the Airbus Center, by I think 5-6 months, I found another program. It was in Belgium.
Oh, yeah.
It was funded by the European Commission. And it was the same thing, like 1 week, journalists from all across the globe. They had some representatives from Arab states. So I went there, and again, the network for me was everything, to be connected to journalists from the entire European region. For me, it was transformative, and how we're still in touch, and I'm seeing them like shine in different areas. Some of them work in the Politico, the
Amazing.
CNN, the BBC. So I don't know, like I feel like in that essence, I always like to encourage youth to just apply, no matter how impossible you think it is. I applied to a program in the UAE without a passport. I applied to a job in the UAE without having like a good enough or like a strong CV, if I would say. I applied to something in Belgium, and I didn't even have a Schengen visa. So it's just about like dreaming, believing, and like the reaching part is easy. It's just like
Absolutely.
the dreaming and believing part that's hard.
I think the more you engage and the more you sort of tempt fate with these, attempts to do more, the more you actually broadened your horizons. Like this third time was a charm for the Arab Youth Program, and then that led you into the program in Belgium, and then that led you into just one leads into the other and opens up new doors for you, and that's really, really incredible. So with the work you're currently doing with COP29, how did the work you did for COP28 prepare you, and what are you currently working on with COP29 on the road to Azerbaijan?
Amazing. So COP29, as I told you, for me was a transformative moment in youth inclusion. We got to incorporate youth from every corner, every underrepresented corner in the globe. And now, when we have been into the SBs, we've filmed with them, and we've seen how much they've progressed and how much they're leading in their own home countries. So that was the mission and vision we're going with as the COP28 presidency. Taking it to the COP29 presidency, we're very supportive of their own plans and their objectives. They're very keen on children inclusion, which I find essential, because children, it's a huge array. Like you've got, because youth are just from the age of 18. So you've got young people up until the age of 17, they still have their own voices. They need to be heard.
Absolutely.
Their fears need to be considered. Their objectives need to be put on point. So COP29, like I wouldn't speak on behalf of them, but I know that they're very heavy on children inclusion and also carrying on more regional work, because the beautiful thing about COP is that it's not just in one country. It's one of these conferences that takes it up to each and every single region in the globe. So you get to focus on the issues that this region needs in particular. So they're having a focal focus on the region of Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and honestly, it's very mind or like eye-opening for me to see what are the climate issues that this region faces. So it's very interesting to be working, like to transition from MENA, going to the Gulf, going to Central Asia, just seeing how climate change affects each and every single region differently, and working on that simultaneously.
Absolutely. So COP29 are our clients, and working with them, especially closely during SB60, it's really remarkable, the sort of vision that they have, the attitude that they're bringing forward, the things that they prioritize, like you said, with youth and children. They really bring a distinct point of view, and I think that this upcoming COP as well is going to be an intersectionality of a lot of issues that have been sort of developing more and more through time. And I think a lot of people are expecting some really actionable results in Baku. So I think, Baku's going to be a really interesting time. We're all looking forward to it. We don't necessarily come here at the agency from climate background. Some of us do, some of us don't. But their passion is like really infectious, and I think we're all becoming better-minded people for working with them.
I agree. One thing I love to add here is that I think like so many, like a few people come into the climate space with the climate knowledge.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think it's okay because you do not need to be a climate expert just to be keen on what's happening. It's just like a very few things, a very few sustainable practices, and just a shift in your mindset that matters. So I love it when I like get to talk to like my friends or someone who's not in the space at all, because I wasn't in the space myself, and seeing how like what to prioritize and how easy it is to be an advocate, and that you do not have to have all the knowledge in the world to be a climate advocate. All you have to have is just like some responsibility towards the planet we're living in, towards yourself, towards future generations.
I mean, awareness is key, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can come from a background of not knowing anything at all, but like we also work with the Year of Sustainability with the
Mm-hmm.
team behind UAE Year of, and I mean to talk about people whose attitudes are infectious. Those people are so passionate about raising awareness, about educating the public, about getting everyone's buy-in to, you know, having more sustainable practices in the UAE specifically, um, to the point that, you know, their small grassroots steps are even I mean, in fairness, they're placed for policy changes, but we're seeing that translate into policy changes. But it's nice to see it happen both top down and bottom up, and I think the UAE is a really good, you know, case study of that kind of shift because, you know, relatively speaking, as a nation, I mean, we're a young nation, and we are, you know, still in the early stages of our sustainability journey. But to have come so far in such a short time is really incredible. Yeah. Mariam, you're such a positive person on the whole.
Thank you.
Having interacted with you, you like radiate positivity. Where did the inspiration for the good news come from?
That's one of my favorite questions. So it was the year 2020. I couldn't make it to the Arab Youth Center. And I'm a person who's very, as you can see, I'm a workaholic. I love to work. I love to make impact. I hate to be someone who is not as impactful to my community as I should.
Yeah.
So 2020 hit the fan and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to do something that's quite different from everything that's happening around. I wanted to experiment. I hated the fact that I'm stuck in my own room. So I thought if I'm stuck in the room, okay, like I better do something with it. I had my tripod, I had my light ring, I had my mic because I'm a mass communication student. And because I was a journalism student, you've got like a bunch of applications that are news related. So each day you wake up and you wake up to 20 plus devastating news of people dying. We haven't found like a vaccine yet. People dying on like every corner in the world. People are fleeing their countries, and you also, because I was still into climate a bit, so you see people fleeing their own like refugee camps or whatever just because of COVID. So it was heartbreaking. And then one day I took it on myself, like, hey, I need to find one piece of good news. I'm very depressed. Everyone's very depressed. Just one piece of good news. So I run through the applications, 20 plus apps, and then I found one speck of hope and one small piece of, like, it's a tiny piece of good news. Like the entire story, it wasn't positive in essence. It was about Syrian refugees who were in camps in, I don't remember where exactly, but because of how the camps were like very unsafe in terms of COVID, they managed to get back to their homes because there's COVID, so there's no war. So you can see the smiles on their faces that they've left their refugee camps and then they're back to their homes. So I thought that's an incredible piece of good news, and I wanted to put it on like somewhere. Someone needs to know about that. So I thought, okay, let me see if there are like 2-3 more pieces of good news that I can find. You said you've like before we've had
Start
this
collecting them like nuggets.
I swear, it's like putting apples into the basket. And you said something about being to Alexandria. You've seen the waters, right? Not that bright.
Could be brighter.
2020, the brightest Alexandria's waters I have ever seen them. Born in 99, I've never seen them that blue. So crystal waters in Alexandria is something that we've never seen before. So put more in the basket, 4 or 5 until I had 7 pieces of good news. I thought, okay, let me put my news anchor hat on, set up everything, set my mic. Good morning, everyone. This is Mariam Solika, and this is the good news. Today we're going to speak about X, Y, and Z. And then I finished the episode 2.5 minutes, and it was more of a news report rundown. Put it on my social media, friends only. I just want my friends to be happy. Like I
got you. Literally trying to spread joy.
But we, my friends, I was just like very selfish at that point. And then my friends really liked it. And everyone's, hey, open the privacy, make it public. I'm like, okay, it doesn't hurt to make more people happy. So I made it public, and it went viral in Egypt. That one video, I was like, interesting. I can do that for another week. Just another week.
Love that.
Did it for another week, a week, and 4 years now. We're here.
That's incredible. And so, how do you find your little apples for the basket? Like, is there a process?
So many different processes. So because I started this like from scratch, usually when you start like a business, there's like you see business models, you get to learn from other people what they've done. But for me, I was very young, I was 20, and it was a completely new business model. So I had to figure out how to build it step by step, and I'm still building it along the way. But with the courses that I've taken, with the programs that I've been to, I figured out like 4 or 5 ways that I find very, very beneficial. So first of all, the most important tool for me is Google Trends, because you have to see what people are discussing, what are they talking about, what are they interested in, how can I see the good and the bad, because usually what's on Google Trends is like the horrific news.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you get to see how I can segue from that horrific news into another piece of good news. So just recently in Egypt, we had like the most trending thing, like was the top, like the number one trending search was prayer for exams. Everyone was going through their exams phase. So what we did is it's a carousel post about how to prepare for your exams, like what are the most up-to-date ways to study, and like what are successful methods that you could use. And again, it blew up, it went viral. So that for me is important to know what people are up to, because again, communication is just sender, channel, message, receiver. So if you're not interested in what the receiver is saying, like there's no point in the communications
100%.
message. And besides Google Trends, you get to see what are the other credible news sources in the region that you could check. And besides that, I love to just like scroll through my social media and check what everyone's up to. Sometimes you find stories from your own friends. So one of my most viral videos ever, and it's been like 3 years ago, was one of my friends in our own university. It's not as popular in Egypt, or it's not like that big. But that one friend, she used to write notes for everyone in her like, class. And then on their graduation day, they created some sort of a march for her, like with claps and flowers.
Sweet.
And I really love that person. So I thought, like, why not? Like, it's an incredible piece of good news. It shows how one person and what one
Can
good
make
thing
such
you
an
can
impact.
Exactly. So I did that one piece of news, and it had like 10 million views. So I think also, like, before you look at what are the like stories that are like making headlines everywhere, you have to look a little deeper, or like just at your feet, like the low-hanging fruit, if they would say. And that for me is the stories that create the connection, because it has the human part in it, and not just like overall or like
100%.
trending top line.
You mentioned, obviously you're still super engaged with it and it's growing and developing. Where do you see it going? How do you see it developing further?
Exactly. I remember my first podcast, I had it 9 months after I started the Good News. And the host asked me, where do you see the good news in 4 years, in 5 years? So now we're 4 years ahead. I think I've achieved 50% of what I wanted to do. I've always dreamed of it being its own independent news agency, spreading good news from all across the globe, having my own office that's mainly white and pink, because these are the branding colors, and a bit of yellow.
Essentials.
You gotta do what you gotta do. I'm very happy with where I am right now. I built a team. They're very keen on delivering positive and happy news across the Arab region every single day. And my vision for it is just like to cross beyond the Arab region and just unlock the potential of youth wherever it is, and also be very keen on spreading positive news without minimizing or without, I don't know, diluting what's happening all around us. Because again, what we do also in the Good News, that sometimes when the news around us is very horrific, which is the case right now, you have to be very picky and very selective with what kind of news you say, to not just seem like you're detached or you're living in like your own joy area. If you watch this Inside Out. So
Not yet.
yeah, I think you have to.
I'm going to.
You have to. But for me, it's just like being realistic while being optimistic.
Yeah.
Globally.
I love that. It's such an important mission. It's such a beautiful story. And thank you for doing that. Honestly, the world needs more good news, and I hope you find a way to amplify that particular voice more and more and more every year.
Thank you.
Absolutely. To kind of wrap this up, I want the listeners to know where they can find you. I want to know where they can find all sorts of good news, and maybe a recap on how they can get involved with a few sustainability initiatives.
Amazing. So they can find me on LinkedIn, Mariam Solika, if they want to reach to me in person. And the good news, it's on Instagram, TikTok, where else are we? YouTube, and it's at the Good News MS. I'd love to see everyone there because again, it's a land filled with opportunities, and now with the good news, we're focusing on creating opportunities for young people. So I'd love to see any listener who's listening to us to right now on the platform. That's one part. Second part is like how to find opportunities in the sustainability field. I'd say always stay connected to thought leaders in the industry, whether it's with the Air Abuse Center, whether it's like stalking people who used to work in the places that I swear like it works.
Sometimes stalking is the way to go.
Stalking on LinkedIn is the way to go for everything. It connects you to so many people. This is my keyword always. So stay connected to these thought leaders. Ask them for their guidance. Do not be afraid to drop anyone a text at any point at any given time of day.
DM your ministers.
Go ahead. You never know what's on the other side.
Absolutely. And closing thoughts. Do you have this is an important question. Do you have any piece of advice for any young members of our audience listening who feel somewhat stuck, who kind of want to make a change, who have aspirations but don't know where to take them?
I know. So the saddest thing about our generation is that we're always results focused, because you get bombarded on social media on the daily with look at this, he's got that fancy car, look at that, he's got his fancy house, look at this, he's the CEO, look at that, he started his own business. So you always get to see like the very last chapter of what everyone has been through, and it's very pressuring to be on the
it's the worst.
It puts so much pressure on you. So something that I learned through the journey is just to start and not look at the final result, how it's going to look like, and do it with passion and with love. And as long as you do not have the end goal in mind, like I know people always say like you have to put the end goal in mind so you know where you're directed. For me, it's like the opposite. Do not put the end goal in mind, because you can be taken to so many other different beautiful places than the end goal that you have in mind. So do whatever you want to do with passion. Start with what you have. I swear, I started with an Oppo 11. That was the first phone I filmed with. I started with my Samsung. It wasn't even a mic. It was just like I put it here, and then I managed to put the audio on the video, because the audio itself from the video wasn't that good. The light ring, it was 100 Egyptian pounds. With I think now it's just like can be $1.50.
So the highest quality items.
And I just started.
Yeah.
And then partners started calling me. I started monetizing, and just like, here I am in a completely different country on my own 4 years later.
Maybe the end goal was the friends we made along the way.
Right?
Yeah.
Just like start wherever you are. Do not look at the end goal, and be a dreamer. You never know what's on the other end. Just like dream, and put some work into it. Do not focus on the end goal. Just like dream and do. Find your balance between those two.
Inspirational, beautiful, wise, powerful,
Thank you.
shining. Thank you so much for joining me today, Mariam. I had such a good time talking to you.
Thank you, Tom.
You bring about such a beautiful message, beautiful energy, and I think we all have a lot to learn from you. So I look forward to everyone hearing this episode and learning.
Thank you so much. So it was my pleasure being here. It's just like if there's one thing I would end with, it's a quote from my favorite movie. It's hope is a good thing, and no good thing ever dies. So just keep that with you. Stay hopeful, and yeah, have a great day, whoever's listening to us right now.
Can't top that. We're out.